Hey everybody, this is Strict9 with Strict9 GP, and we're going back to the Phillies with this playthrough of Out of the Park Baseball 19. This should be episode 20, and we are in the off season of 2032 and 2033, going into the 2033 season. And spoiler alert right off the bat, if you're looking at this screen, you'll see I did go ahead and finish the playoffs. Honestly, I started playing through that series with the Braves, and it was just so bad. I just didn't feel like, honestly, recording and broadcasting the episodes. And I felt like, it became obvious as the series went along that we're not going to progress in this one. So let's just go ahead and sim ahead and get to the off season and think about next year. Recapping though a little bit, if you missed the last episode, we finished the year with our best record since I've been doing this playthrough, with 94 wins. We won the division. We made it through that first division series after being down 2-0 to Arizona. We came back and won it, but against Atlanta we just really tanked. We really stunk it up. The first two games were almost impossible to finish out because our pitching was so bad. We lost one game 14-3 or 14-5, and then we started to make a game of it, and then our offense just collapsed. And the final tally, we lost 4-2 to the Braves, and I think we scored maybe 5 runs in the last 3 games, and it was not a great way to end the series. But in some ways, hey, we got further. We still have some work to do. It is kind of bittersweet that we lost to the Braves, who we really handled pretty well all season. We had a winning record. I think we were 11-7 or something like that against the Braves in the regular season. We beat them out in the division, but they held on. They beat us, and then in an exciting series, they took the A's to the distance and beat them in the World Series. So that will be that's going to be the, I don't know if this screen will show it. No, it's just going to show. I'm pretty sure that's the first time the Braves the first time they've made the World Series in this playthrough, and the first time, of course, that they've won it. And Oakland, that was their second time in there, but none of the usual suspects were back. I mean, Tampa Bay, we haven't seen Milwaukee in a couple years, few years now, so we might have some new life going in the playthroughs. And for us next year, I'm just hoping that we have a good enough off season that we can improve where we need to improve. I'm going to go ahead in this episode and we'll look at some of the award winners, and we'll look at what's happened so far with us this off season and look at what we need to kind of accomplish. We've just finished up with arbitration, and the free agents have just filed, so we'll look at that. But going through the awards, we haven't had many who showed up, and we didn't have any individual award winners as far as I can remember, but not even on the Gold Gloves. But for top defenders, I say that, and then right away I'm have to correct myself. We did. Mike Lockfeld did get the Gold Glove at pitcher, and honestly, it's the second time he's gotten it. So it's good to know that he has some positives for him in the playoffs. He wasn't too bad. I think he gave us a win against Atlanta. One of the few pitchers who gave us a win in that series. But he won the Gold Glove at pitcher, and that was it for the awards. We had some guys who got some votes, and we'll look at that here. For instance, in the reliever of the year, in the American League, went to Jimmy Reese, who is a young reliever who really just had his first full season, looks like. And then for the National League, Mike Swan with the Nationals, who had a great year, had an amazing wins above replacement for a relief pitcher, 4.7. That was really amazing. His strikeouts per 9 innings are really high, great earned run average, and he won the award, and then Austin finished second. But it looks like Swan got all the first place votes, so he really dominated in that category. And then for the Platinum Stick Award winners, the usual suspects, nothing really too big of a surprise there. In the National League, one thing that is kind of a thorn in my side every time I see it, Pat Dowdy did get the Platinum Stick Award his second time in a row, his second year in a row for the Reds. And this is a guy, if you remember, I think I talked about it in the last playthrough, he was a guy that I had drafted, and it was either I go with Barge or I go with Dowdy. And Dowdy was young, and I needed a first baseman, so I traded Dowdy for Vandenhoeven, who's been my first baseman for the last few years, and you can see what he's done. Barge has been solid, but Dowdy, unfortunately, has developed into a serious all-star player, and he is not yet 25. This guy's going to be, if he stays healthy, and he's listed as durable, he is going to be a great player in this playthrough and in the league. So I kind of wish I hadn't traded him away now. But then Rookies of the Year, I think for the American League, this guy for Boston, he's another great looking player. I think to have that kind of a rookie year is amazing. 38 home runs, scored 91 runs, 308 batting average, and he's only 22. So Boston looks like they have a pretty big star in the making there. And then the National League, it went to one of the international free agents who came over from, I think, I'm not sure what league he came from. He's Japanese, so I imagine it was Japanese league, but he had a good first year for the Mets. And then managers, Kotsay with Oakland and McEwing, I think, for the Mets. But Rocky Stroman won the Cy Young in the American League, had a good year, 19 wins for Minnesota. And he's fairly young as well, just 26, so he's had 3 solid years in the league. And then in the National League, it was Chris Lent, who, not somebody I would have expected to see there. He's just a 2.5-star pitcher, but he had a great season for Colorado. And considering Colorado, he had a 2.70 ERA, led the league in ERA and innings pitched, which is kind of odd. I'm surprised that 206 innings led the league, but 17 wins, and that really, I don't know, that concerns me a little bit. It's something I may have to start paying attention to. If maybe there's something going on with the settings that are preventing some of these pitchers from getting too many innings. I'm not seeing, just looking through the list here, I'm not seeing anybody else above 200. Nellum's finished second. He had 18 wins, which led the league, and then and 232 strikeouts. But Ian Plyler managed to finish third. He's won the award 5 times, but he had 14 wins, pretty decent ERA, led the league once again in strikeouts, but looked like St. Louis just had another bad year. And then for the MVP award, it went once again to Brandon Kinsler. That's his second in a row. He had a tremendous year, 160 RBIs. I think that's something that stands out. Also 9.5 wins above replacement. But Alfredo Santana, another solid year for him. I'm expecting him to make the Hall of Fame in this playthrough. He's getting up to 2,000 hits. He'll probably get that next year if he stays healthy. I expect he's going to probably finish above 400 home runs or so. He's probably got 4, maybe 5 years left of good productivity in him. But it was Kinsler in the American League. National League, it went to Chris McCurry from Atlanta, who was solid for sure. 51 home runs, 138 RBIs. He led the National League in both those categories, and he hit 306. A solid year for him. And one of the things that's, of course, interesting about him now is with free agency that just came up, he is out there. He filed for free agency this year, but Look at that contract, man. $41 million. Yeah, $41 million. So I don't know who's going to offer him that. I don't think by any stretch of the imagination, as good as he might be, I don't think he is even close to being worth $45 million or $41 million a year. So it's going to be interesting to see who finally does sign him. It might be a team like the Yankees, the Red Sox, somebody with a pretty big, deep pocket, but it's not going to be us. Looking through, that was it for the awards, and I had to make some tough calls when it came to arbitration. And it was basically a couple of guys who, for the most part, are bench players, but they're important bench players. It was Jeremy Riley, and he was backup first baseman, and Aaron Thal, who's been a backup infielder. And I love having those guys come off the bench. They've been very valuable. They've got good numbers, but I was faced with, I think both of them were asking in the neighborhood of $2 to $3 million through arbitration, and I just couldn't see with the both of them combined. I couldn't see going $5-6 million on just a couple of backup players, as good as they are, a couple of bench players. And so I had to let them go. And I kept pretty much every pitcher who was up for arbitration, I did go ahead and give an offer to. And that means that, yeah, our rotation right now, the bullpen right now, looks like it did at the end of last season when we won the division but didn't make it in the playoffs, and we didn't make it against Atlanta mainly for that pitching. But the way it turned out, Danny Ude received $3 million. Not too bad. I think he's a 3-star. Turned it on a little bit there towards the end of the season. I think he's probably worth $3 million. Like Lockfeld, once again, I don't know what to do with the guy, but he did give me 15 wins. If I could pick up another starter, move him to the 5th spot, that would be fine. I think he would fit in there. But he got $1.375 million. I think that's really a bargain. Even as much as I cuss this guy out every year, I think it's a bargain for what he brings you. What wasn't a bargain was Sean Barge, $15.7 million. He's going to be a free agent next year. I'm probably going to see if I can float him out there in some trades, but with that kind of salary, I don't expect anyone to really pick up on him. So that was a pretty big blow. Bobby Austin, $4.2 million. I expected he would get that. Danny McSparron, $3.5 million. He was probably with Cantelme, those two. I think they were my most solid pitchers in that starting rotation. And Cantelme did get $8.7 million. I'm not sure he's worth that, but he is a pretty solid mid-rotation starter, I think, right now, at least has been for the last couple of years. And then I was able to keep Neidiger at $900,000. He had a great year last year off the bench, and I hope he can contribute again next year. And then I'm still open to making some moves at first base. Vanden Heuvel was really just terrible in the playoffs, and he had a subpar year last year. After making some decent improvement in 2031, 2032 was a bad year for him. He does give you good leadership. He does give you good defense. He plays every game. He has not missed a game in 3 seasons. Probably 3 seasons plus when you consider his rookie year or the first year I called him up. But his offense is it's too much of a gamble. He's going to have to start showing me something, and I don't know if he's capable. I think this might be his ceiling. So it's time, I think, to look at some other options at first base. But I kept him on the team at $850,000. I felt like, that's not that big of a gamble to really throw $850,000 at him, even if he's going to be a backup. So with the arbitration and after free agency, that left me with total money available of $34.5 million. Enough to sign two good all-star starter type players potentially, but little else. And as it is every year, it's really going to be the starting rotation where I need the most help. I've got the 5 guys I've got here now. Babone, who honestly looked pretty good in limited play last year. I should have stuck him in there a little bit longer, but I've got three star pitchers solid. I've got Lockfeld 2.5, who's his control is always a gamble. He walks a lot of guys. It's hit or miss what you're going to get from him. Probably going to get double digits in wins, but high ERA. It's going to be frustrating to watch him pitch every game all year. But I think for the most part, 4 of those 5, I'm okay with. The bullpen still got some guys there with Compton, Medina, Rozier, Wright. Still needs to, I think, get a little bit better movement, but I think the bullpen is okay. But if I could get a starting pitcher or another good, solid bullpen guy, that's what I'm looking for free agency. Mejia, I think he's going to have one more year of starting catching in or at least a platoon situation, and then I'll probably have to look at a replacement for sure. I'm thinking about just going with Andrus for now. He's a good offensive catcher, not so much defensive, but I may just go with him for now, so I don't have to commit a whole lot of money to a catcher for right now. I don't really have anybody coming up in the system. I've got a potential 1.5 star here in AA, and he's got some good overall ratings offensively, not so much defensively, but I'm more than likely going to have to start looking next year in free agency for a good, solid catcher. So Barge, I'm going to give Cameron Tennessee a chance this year, but he's still just 26. He's got some good defensive ratings. His individual ratings are okay, especially against lefties, but I would like to see him get a little bit better, like contact at 11. I wouldn't mind seeing that go up to maybe 12, 13, but I don't know if this is going to be his ceiling. But he is really, in all honesty, when I've played him, he's looked really good, and he kind of was a big part of why we won against Arizona in the playoffs. I mean, when I put him in there for Devers in that series, he had a couple good games, made some great defensive plays. So I'm okay going with a full year, or at least attempting a full year with him starting at third base. Shortstop, I'm set for now. Ash, who did get some votes for MVP, he's still set at left. Vargas in center. Ochoa, I think, is still in a platoon situation. I think he's still got some pretty good numbers against righties, so I can go with him for the most part. This is his last year before free agency. I think I can still go with him, at least in a platoon situation in right. And then I've got a couple guys here. Kevin Cox, Eddie Tipton. I think I'm going to give those guys a look in spring training. So going from top to bottom, I guess I'm just kind of looking at where my weaknesses are. I really feel like it's the same situation as it always has been. I'm needing starting pitching help, maybe a little bit better bullpen situation, like a true like dominant setup guy, for instance. But it's still going to be pitching and starting pitching, and this time this year, I think I'm going to start looking at first base, see what's out there. But I've got some interesting choices coming out of AAA here. I think Espinal, he's just 23 years old. I think he's got a chance, if not starting, I think he's at least got a chance of coming in the bullpen. And as a matter of fact, if I just set his position to a reliever, he becomes right off the bat a 3-star with a potential 4-star. So I think this guy, I'm going to give him a chance to start in spring training, but he's only got 2 solid pitches right now. I think he needs to develop that third one before I would think about making him a true starting pitcher. But I'm going to take a look at this guy in spring training, and I think he's ready to go right now. I'm going to leave him back at starting pitching for now. And then I also think Andy Padgett, Salcido, who is a guy I signed last year, he's going to be in the bullpen. No, this is not a guy I signed last year. Sorry. He's got a chance to come up in the bullpen. And then Carvente, who's looked good at AAA, had a really decent 2030 in Philadelphia. So I've got some good choices, I think, coming up from AAA for the bullpen. So again, that knocks that off the list. So really, it's back to starting pitching and maybe a first baseman that I'm looking for in free agency. But now, first baseman. This is my former first-round pick from 2030. I moved him up to AAA mainly because of his age. He's about 24. His ratings are not quite there. Individually, they're getting there, but overall, maybe not. But OSA likes him even better than my scout in terms of his potential ratings. I would like to kind of give this guy a chance to develop and maybe become the first baseman that Vandenhoeven couldn't be. So that means that I probably don't want to invest a whole lot of money in a first baseman right now if I've got luck here that I can maybe move up in a year or two to give him a chance at starting. So essentially, I think I'm back to just looking for starting pitching in free agency. And saying that now, I've already looked at free agency before the episode, and we're back to where we always have been in this playthrough, and really in the Reds playthrough, it's the same thing. Starting pitching is at a premium, and there's just no good, solid choices available. Right now, there is one pitcher who's rated at 3.5 stars, and he's going to be out for the next 6 months. So he probably won't even start. No, he won't. So we're November 26th. He will not even be able to start until May, June time period. And he's wanting $12 million a year, and he's not really had too many good years in this league since he's been here. So I'm really just stuck once again going with, I think, the rotation that I have available right now. And there's a few guys here, like I think Aaron Bureau, if I'm saying that name right, you know, he's got some positives in some ways. 4 pitches, pretty good stamina. Definitely his individual ratings and stuff and control are good, but he's listed as fragile, and he's coming off a terrible year. 6.39 ERA and 16 losses, and he's never had an ERA above or below 4. He gives up a lot of home runs. So he's out. Alvarez is 36, Canada's 33, and he's got some movement issues. Loghead, who is somebody that I got rid of a few years ago, he actually had a pretty decent year, but he's only got two really solid pitches. I don't think he's ready to start every day. I think he would be mainly used in the bullpen. So I really don't see anybody here worth signing. Trevor Rogers is available again, but I think it's the same situation. He's had some pretty good years in the past, but I think right now he's only a 2+ pitcher, and that means, to me, that means he's not ready to start. I think he's another guy that I would have to put in the bullpen. Mitch Keller. It's just really crazy to me that this is how the pitching is developing in this league, which I understand in some ways. The AI is smart enough to value pitching and hold on to it. So I know that that's probably what's going on. But year after year in free agency, there's no pitching available when it comes to starting. So I feel like I'm going to have to go with pretty much the same team that I have. And right now I've got 1, 2, so that's 5 starters. So I got 13. I usually go with a staff of 12. So I've got a few guys I can call up out of AAA. But for the most part, I feel like I've probably got my staff set about as good as I'm going to get it for next year. Now, one of the things that I can do is I can try to trade a few guys. And I'm going to throw out Sean Barge because I'm starting to doubt whether I really want to sign him after his free agent or when he becomes a free agent, because I just don't like the way his ratings against lefties, the way that's developed, and he's just such a much worse hitter overall against lefties, and he's going to demand a pretty big contract, I'm pretty sure, and I don't feel like I can really go as high as he's going to want. And I'm going to go ahead and just shop him around and see if there's anything that comes up for him one-on-one. And isn't just like a salary dump from the AI here. But hey, right off the bat, there's several pitchers who are showing up. Josh Yoakum, he's coming off a 16-win season, a durable starter. He's a fan favorite. He would be another 3-star pitcher, and he's in arbitration, so he's probably got one more year of arbitration left. And he's looked pretty good the last 3 years, so it's not terrible. Dave Bryan, got some questions about his movement. Some pretty good relievers here, but I really I want a true starter if I'm going to trade somebody like Barge. So there's Yoakum, and then looking at the rest of the offers here, Romero from Atlanta. He really handled me in the playoffs, but he didn't have that great of a year last year, so I'm not really sold on him in terms of how good of a starter he is. And then there's Randy Mayhew from Chicago. He's coming off a good year. He is a lefty and has some pretty good numbers there. 3 solid pitches. He's durable. He's had a pretty good career, but Eric Porter, he's okay. 3 years. I don't want somebody who's going to be a free agent necessarily in a year either. So now there's Juan Vallejo, who used to pitch for me. He had a good year last year, but I don't think he's worth $11.1 million. Pretty good closer there, potentially. But he's only made it as high as single A right now. There's Jeter Downs from the Dodgers. Chris Caldwell from the Milwaukee Brewers. Now he's signed for several years. Looks like, that's a pretty bad contract. $10.9 million in 2033, but then it jumps up to 15.8. Hey, Dave Schrimsher from Minnesota, an old pitcher from the Phillies. Chris Wells. So for the most part, I'm looking at 3-star potential is probably about the best I could get for Barge right now. And then if I traded him, let's see if there's any like second baseman out there who would be a good replacement. I might could go with somebody like Hera here, who is an international free agent. Albie's from Atlanta is he played with Houston last year, so he's available. He's had a pretty decent career, 2,300 hits, but he's getting to the tail end of his career. There's so many options I could have, but I may just have to give that more consideration. I do feel like of all the guys I could trade, from an offensive perspective for sure, Barge and even Axe probably make the most sense. And he's just a 3.5 star, and man, his contract is up there. But I'm gonna see what I might potentially be looking at one-on-one for him. Not much. I mean, I would be able to dump that contract if I wanted to, for sure, right off the bat. Yankees are willing to give me a potential 3.5 star reliever who is not even in its arbitration years yet. So I would definitely have some money if I wanted to trade Axe right now. I'm assuming I would take a really big hit, though, in fan interest. But that's intriguing, too. I mean, one of the things that I was thinking about as I started this episode, or when I was going through some things before I started the episode, is maybe it's time to kind of go a little bit of a half rebuild, keep some of the core guys, the three-star and above players who aren't really making too much money. Guys, obviously, I'm going to be keeping Vargas in center, for instance. He's signed to a long-term contract, but guys on that pitching staff, keeping those and getting rid of my any player with a salary above $10 million, and then just kind of piecing the rest in with what I can get from the minors. And it's possible that's the route I take. I'm still not sure what I want to do. I know I'm probably not going to get the pitcher. Well, I know I'm not going to get the pitcher I want through free agency, and it's starting to make a little bit of sense to me to just kind of do a little bit of a rebuild right now. I had a good run with Axe, but I've got some potential, or some players I think I could piece in the lineup from AAA, and might sign a couple guys, low salary free agents, and after next year reassess and see if I want to make some bigger free agent signings at the end of next year. It's so hard to know somehow. sometimes what's the best route. But I know that I'm kind of at a wall after losing the playoffs there. I feel like I don't know if I can get better than those 94 wins with the talent that's available out there. And it might be time to give some of the guys that I need to get developed, like Lockyer, for instance, and Cox, need to get these guys developed in the minors and just give them a chance. And there's also a guy here in Double-A now. If he would start, work on that movement, if his development came up a little bit better there, my scout thinks he's going to be a pretty good pitcher as well. So I'm probably going to do a lot of this offline to keep this from being too boring. And I've also probably going to I'm not going to be recording as many episodes of this Phillies playthrough. It seems like I'm not getting as much interest from it, and I don't want to give up on it, but I also don't want to get too in depth with what I do day in and day out with this playthrough either. So what I'm probably going to do, I'm just going to look at some of the options that I have offline. We're about to get to the winter meetings, and I'm going to do one of two things. I'm going to now look at the salaries row just to show you what I'm thinking. So I'm going to either work on some trades that get these top two guys, Axe and Barge, off the team, so I'll have a whole lot of money going into next year, freed up for free agent. And honestly, these three guys, that would free up over $60 million, I believe. $50 million, sorry. It would free up around $55 million in free agency going into next year. So I'm either going to do that, or I'm going to try to either trade for or sign a starting pitcher that will boost me enough that I can stay where I am with the team I've got and improve on those 94 wins. But of those two options right now, I'm really starting to look at trading Barge and Axe and just doing not a full rebuild, but doing a little bit of rebuilding and see if I can't stay competitive through next year, but really start making some moves, say in a couple years, where I'll have enough money. If a true number one starter or a true ace comes available, I can go with however much money I have to offer. I'll be in a position where I can do it, because it's obvious that this year there's not going to be that kind of pitcher come available. So that'll do it for this episode. Appreciate you watching, and hope you still like the series. And if you're like me, I'm so invested in the team. Phillies are my favorite team, but more than that, I've got some guys here, even Barge, who I did draft. There's some guys here I drafted, and I would like to see how far they develop. Not even, on top of, I'd like to see how far I can get this Phillies team, and hopefully one day get them into the World Series and win it. But I don't want to give up on the series just yet. But I might, hold off on recording every episode like I have been, and like I'm doing with the Reds. And in the future, I might move away from this one and pick up another challenge or another episode, another team that I can manage, or I might even do a historical simulation. I've started thinking about that as well. But for now, I'm going to focus on some stuff offline, and I'll probably pick up again on this Phillies playthrough. Probably be sometime into the next season, maybe around the draft or All-Star break, and see what kind of team I can put together and see if I can make some improvements and get us back to the playoffs and give us a really legitimate shot in the World Series. Thanks for watching as always. Thanks for subscribing and any likes you've been giving me. And I'll see you next episode.